on emerging technologies, deep tech, and emerging Web3 space. It's all about tech in this plenary session. We're going to move into a panel discussion on the topic CTO Innovation Agenda. Now, with rapid changes in technologies, data deluge, lack of technology talent, the CTO agenda has never been more challenging and exciting. This next panel explores how CTOs are approaching digital disruption, how the role of CTO is changing, the mindset of a startup CTO, and how do you decode the technology shifts. I'd like to request you to please welcome our speakers and our moderator on stage. Please welcome on stage Usha V, Director, Engineering and Operations, next year Automotive. Arvind Jayaprakash, Senior Vice President of Technology in Mobi. Parul Jain, Vice President of Engineering, Tableau, Salesforce India. And moderating the session is Rohini Srivathsa, National Technology Officer, Microsoft India.
We have one of our panelists missing in action. So hopefully she'll come. All right, thank you for being here. It's an interesting topic. Let me get started by just setting short context here. Over the last couple of years, we've all seen an acceleration on digital technologies. Technology has become central to every business. Digital has resulted in more and more data. Innovation has become almost the same as technology. What that has done is you've got a lot of different executives in the C-suite. There is a CTO, there is Chief Digital Officers, Chief Data Officers, Chief Innovation Officers, of course, the standard CIO, the Chief Information Officers. I've also heard of Chief Metaverse Officer. That, of course, is a clear indication of the fact that digital and technology is central to every organization. But let me just ask, is that creating clarity? Is that creating confusion? What is happening out there? So maybe, Arvind, you could start us with your thoughts on that.
Sure. All right. I think a lot of it is a reflection of just the diversity of businesses that we have, right? Andreessen Horowitz has this famous thing of bits versus atoms, right? So there are some businesses which are very atoms heavy, like let's say manufacturing. There are things which is somewhere in between, like e-commerce, like there is a digital part of the business, there is also the physical part of the business, and there are things like SaaS businesses, which let's say is all bits. Right? So whoever is running the technology agenda in these different kinds of businesses have varying kinds of responsibilities. Hence, for someone, it just looks like digital transformation of the atoms business. For someone else, how do I do digital marketing? For someone else, how do I make a fully digital product? So just the proliferation of titles is just capturing the richness of the various technology leaders in various businesses, I'd say.
Interesting. And interesting you mentioned atoms versus bits. Maybe I'll ask you, Usha, if you have some thoughts to what Arvind said, because you come from a world which is moving between atoms and bits.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning, everyone. So I kind of agree with what Arvind said, right? So in my space, I come from the automotive space. I think a lot of the roles, what you mentioned, are blurring and, whatever you may be called, but then end of the day, you have to make all those things work, right? It could be innovation, or it could be getting things into production, or it could be, figuring out the advanced technologies. So I would say at some point of time, you're working on all of them, and gone are those days, where we had the luxury of working on all of this in a sequential manner. Now I think, it's all happening in parallel, right? The chip manufacturing or the new chips are coming, the tools are getting, just in time, and then you have to put all of them just at the nth moment. So somewhere I see that, the Indian mentality of jugaad is going to help us to put all of these together at the last moment.
Okay. um, Given that there is a sense of what you call jugaad, let me take that to say, what is the difference in your mind, and maybe I'll ask you, Parul, what is the difference in your mind between jugaad versus a startup mindset?
Yeah, I think I want to start with the connotation that somewhere we have associated jugaad with a little bit of a negative term, wherein, in India at least, we feel that we somehow make things work, and that's what we term as jugaad. But if you look at it, right, like from the micro lens or even from the macro lens, anything we build for jugaad is actually solving a problem. And it's a very innovative way, and it's a very new way of saying, hey, I have a certain set of resources available, and how can I use what is at my disposal to solve for a real problem? Right? Instead of getting into, okay, I will use only this kind of tech, or I will use only this kind of tools, the real thing is solving problems, right? So if we were to say, hey, jugaad versus innovation, in my mind, you can innovate in any number of different ways, and jugaad is definitely the most beautiful innovation that I feel very proud. India brings like a lot of jugaads out, so I feel very proud of that.
Anybody else has thoughts to that, jugaad versus innovation?
Look, it's, I too say that, jugaad, what is it? It's frugality in trying to solve a problem. Buzzword is product market fit. So until you have established PMF, right, you need to be frugal to see, are we solving a real problem? Is what we are, producing as solutions, is it heading in the right direction? So the frugality there is needed. The question of, what is startup mindset from there on is, once, you feel the PMF has been established, you then have to now find ways to make it repeatable. You have to find ways to make it scalable, while retaining some of the goodness. So I think it's a journey. Jugaad is step one. And then there is scaling part, past PMF, which is typically what startups are doing, let's say, by the time they get to, Series A or Series B funding.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think a couple of things, right? One is the mentality of frugality. Just a couple of days back, I was actually speaking with some people in ISRO. And ISRO is India's flagship agency, and the mindset of jugaad that they have been able to, mindset of frugality they've been able to bring to innovation is absolutely inspiring. Well, that's great. Just switching gears a little bit. Again, just as technology, data is becoming everybody's business. And one could say, is data an IT issue, a technology issue, business issue, compliance issue, privacy issue? Which issue is it? It's all of them, right? Question, I guess, Parul, if you could start with, how are you thinking about this data deluge? How are you responding to it, innovating with it, managing it, navigating it?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. So if you look at the digital transformation, and again, like if you look at what we have done in India, right? So all our banks are digitalized. We can do payments using UPI. You go to any of the Western countries, like recently my sister visited from US, and she and her family, they were aghast. Oh my God, like I go to a vegetable vendor, I can pay using UPI. All of this is possible using data, using digital transformation. And what in turn is happening is digital transformation in turn is generating more data. So as Rohini mentioned, we now need to be aware of data ethics, data security, data is coming from marketing and from different aspects and so on. So what I feel is we need to empower everybody with data. And that was one of my mission why I when I most recently joined Salesforce for Tableau. Tableau's mission is to make sure that we can make data reach to every individual. It should not be just in the hands of analysts or key, CXOs or business people to make decisions. We all need to make decisions in our day-to-day journey, in our day-to-day life. And hence, we need to democratize data and make it available. So I feel that is the most important thing that we all as technologists and as individuals in different fields should think about and have at the back of our mind. How can we make data reach people in a way that enables them to make decisions and do better things and do more intelligent things with it?
I think this is an important enough topic that I might want to ask both of you for your thoughts. Maybe Usha, you could start.
Okay. I think here I have a slightly different point of view, what Parul said, right? Data, I think all of us are bombarded with a lot of things, right? You look at your mobiles, computers, or at office, right? Different things are coming to us. I would say data is good, but then how do we look at the data? At least what I face is, there are tons of data that is given to us saying, you look at it and come back. Maybe I feel, we need to make people to look at it and then, come up with some kind of either a decision or a trend so that, it is helping them to make a decision. Because what I see is, many a times they come with data and give it to you and say, here is the data, look at it and tell me what I need to do, right? So we need to make them to look at it and say, what are the relevant things that we pick up, or what are the trend lines we are going to look at, so that that is helping them to make a decision rather than looking at it and not using it in an effective manner, I would say.
Yeah, Arvind, your thoughts? And I know that's where you were going, but maybe you could respond later. But Arvind, your thoughts?
I think generally as the world becomes more digital, more data is just a side effect of that. Simple example, if you're an FMCG, right, and you're making toothpaste, right, they had to perhaps deal with 100 distributors directly. Their product was meant for the entire mass market, but that FMCG company dealt with like maybe 100 distributors, 1,000 distributors. Now you try and sell the same toothpaste through an e-commerce website, app, what have you. You're suddenly selling the same thing to a few million people. So your direct consumer count you're dealing with has gone up. The number of transactions has gone up. Similarly, even on, let's say, financial side, what Parul said, right? The number of times 20 years ago I would interact or transact with my bank maybe was 15 times a year, 12 times to withdraw salary, and then maybe 3 additional extra transactions. Now the same bank is having to push through hundreds of transactions from me because of UPI. So as more and more activities are fundamentally becoming digital, right? Just the data that's getting generated as a consequence of that goes up, and all of that's with a single company, right? The bank has a lot more, the e-commerce company has a lot more. That then brings its own technical challenges of processing data, and then all other questions of how do I extract business value? I'm sitting on way more data, so how do I think of consumer security? All of that's compounding simply because we are becoming more and more digital. So unless that trend is going to slow down or reverse, it's just more data coming all the way.
Can I make a point?
Yeah, please do.
So I think we are all saying the same thing. There is a lot of data, and we cannot throw data at every individual, but we need to build those tools, apps, so that there are meaningful insights. I would recommend all of you, go and read Gartner's 2022 predictions. It is called Data and Business Analytics. It is free for everyone. 2 key takeaways from there, what Gartner says. One is adaptive AI. So today we have been using artificial intelligence in a way wherein data is given to it, a model is trained, and then it starts predicting. But adaptive artificial intelligence is more like the new data keeps getting fed into the same models. The models become smarter and smarter, and that's how, they take better decisions. So that is one trend, adaptive intelligence. And second trend is decision intelligence. So both are interlinked, and I think both drive the same point, that with the availability of data, now we are at a stage where we can train bigger models, larger models, and make sure that we are reaching towards decision intelligence.
Yeah, I think, so clearly data deluge is not stopping, if only it's accelerating, and that too exponentially, if you look at the IoT landscape, et cetera. And clearly what you said about insights and adaptive learning. But we are all looking at so many different trends. You said adaptive learning, we said AI, we said IoT, intelligent edge. You can just keep on talking about so many different technology trends. How do you navigate it? How do you think that, or how do you, in your daily priorities, think about which trends you're going to focus on, which trends you're going to yourself get skilled up on, and which is one you're going to bet on, so to speak. So maybe if, Usha, you want to start with that?
Yeah. Okay. So definitely, we talked about data being, so much available, and then tools and other things. Especially in the automotive space, I think, we are at a point, like everything has to happen now. That's where that startup mentality is coming into the organizations, right? You got to look at new tools. You got to look at, how do you interact with the cloud, and then what tools you will use for flashing, and then how do you secure them. This is a big one, I would say, which is happening, especially, for those of you who are looking into the automotive space. The cybersecurity is a big one. I think that we have so much of work that can be done and looked into, right? It is just starting. Everybody is looking at hardware security, software security, and the access control. Who do we give the access? And then even though we put so much of security, now the problem is, how do we service the vehicles that we put into the market, right? It's becoming too difficult for service technicians to operate those vehicles because we put so much security. So I think we are trying to deal with all these things. I would say, especially in this automotive world, we are dealing with cybersecurity is one of the big things, that can be looked into.
So I heard from you data increasing, but cybersecurity as as a critical point. How about you, Arvind?
So it's a question of how do you prioritize across all of these emerging technologies. My simple way of looking at it is look at what aspect of our business or adjacent business hasn't gone through changes for the longest period of time, and there is something new. For example, in Mobi, where I work at, it's been all about online advertising. But then what we realized is, let's say, billboard advertising hasn't changed for, large number of decades. You now have sensors, you now know people movement, a lot of the billboards have become digital. Suddenly you can go change that. So the billboard has become dynamic, it's no longer static. It's reached a place in the US wherein in a mall, basis demographics of people who are in, let's say, 3-block radius, what gets shown there is changing dynamically. Or I'm looking at something else like, video content production, where let's say someone is trying to demonstrate a new product, maybe it's a shoe or something, right? We see that you start bringing in, mixed reality into that. Fundamentally, the quality of content changes. Again, that hasn't been disrupted in a long while outside of, multi-million-dollar studios which do VFX. So for me, it's always a question of what hasn't changed for a really long time, for which there now seems to be a new piece of technology. And just pick that up, because then the impact is very visible and then very dramatic.
That's very insightful, actually, because what you have said is that it's not about the technology, it's about the business problem, it's about the challenge that is ready to be disrupted because of something that may be happening in technology. Very interesting. How about you?
Yeah, I'll approach this from a very different angle. So my mentor once told me, hey, Parul, there are all these different things coming your way. Like think of them as cosmic rays and quasars and whatnot. And one thing that you can do is just look around and say, hey, I'm helpless, I can't do much, and just freeze in the moment. Yeah. Another thing you can do is make a note of, okay, these are the different things, and how can I create a routine? How can I create carve out time for myself, for my team, for my organization, for my community, so that we read through it little by little. We try to understand what are these different phenomena. And you don't have to go to full depth into each one of them, but start with a 10,000 feet view. Try to understand what are the latest trends, what are the new things going on. You may not imbibe them today. You might not imbibe them readily, but they just keep accumulating in your brain. And eventually when you're working on your product, when you're working on your technology, you will know that, yes, I read about X, my colleague read about Y, and this is a great thing that I can use and adopt in my new product and my new technology, or even as Arvind said, to disrupt your own business or to bring about some newness. So I think it's not about freezing in the moment, but let all the innovation happen, try absorb whatever you can, and instead of having a FOMO, a fear of missing out, imbibe it, and I'm sure you'll be able to use it at some point in time.
Interesting. I think the point that I would like to build upon is the ability to look at where there might be disruption and where there might be a business problem to be solved is a different mindset than a technology mindset. how do you define that mindset? Do you see that there is a difference in the way a CTO mindset needs to evolve to almost flip the problem? Right? Because many of us feel whatever tech we are working on is the latest and greatest, but that's not how you defined it. So maybe, Arvind, if you can start how you think about how you're flipping the problem, so to speak.
Sure. The flipping starts by saying that I'm not here to solve a business problem which is already known, right? The big thing is if you're attempting to solve already well-defined questions, right, there isn't a whole lot of disruption. Disruption is no one has thought about the possibility that you can do something differently, which means the question itself hasn't been framed or posed or given to anyone saying, hey, go solve for this. That's an opportunity that you'll have to spot, knowing your problem domain, knowing your technology, and then you have to look at the intersection of them and saying, what is it that no one has previously considered as worth solving or as potentially a new opportunity which has now become feasible because of a new technology at hand. So if you are chasing well-known, extremely well-understood business problems, there isn't a whole lot of disruption. That's incremental efficiency, maybe, right? But it's not disruption. Disruption fundamentally is picking a question that no one else has previously imagined.
Very interesting. So, speaking of disruptions, we've been through a very serious disruption over the last couple of years, whether it's in our personal lives or professional lives, and every industry has thought of it differently. I'm moving gears a little bit. Would love to hear what has been one of your biggest learning experiences over the last couple of years. Maybe if you can start, Usha, if there's something that you've felt in your professional career in the tech, as a CTO, from that function perspective, that you've had to think differently?
Definitely, there are a lot of things, right? Though we claim in India that we have so much of engineers coming out or people with science and STEM graduation coming out, and we have that. Somewhere in the recent years, I would say, because we are known to come up with, as we told earlier, jugaad, right? We always come up with some kind of a innovative method to solve a problem. So we are known for that. But in the recent past, at least the kind of talent that I come through and then look at them, right? They are looking at, as Arvind rightly defined, if it is templatized, they can do things. But then, disruption comes from when you are thinking about the problem or even recognizing the problem. What we call as, problem solving comes later, but how do you identify the problem? And especially being in India, being in Bangalore, I think every day we see tons of things, that are not stabilized or that are in chaos. And that means, we as people, contributing to the society, living here as CTOs or whatever you want to call yourself, I think we have tons of problems lying around us. It's just that we have to think different and see, how do I take this problem and figure out a solution? Then the solving, technique comes into picture. But before that, if we look around, every day during our commute or during our personal lives, there are a lot of things that we think, we can contribute and make a disruption there. But it's just that, the mindset, I feel we will have to nurture. It could be at the upbringing with our children or in college, where we will have to tune our mind to look at things differently. Because we have been very much tuned to look at things with blinders on. That I think we'll have to change that mindset by taking off the blinders and just look around and just observe. I think a lot of things will come into play that we can make a difference.
Your thoughts to that? I can see you now nodding.
So I think I would say that, we all need to learn to ask the right questions. And I will quote a NASA story. I'm sure you all must be aware of it. And NASA said, hey, we need a pen to write in space. And everybody was out there building that right pen where it ink would not outflow and all of that. And finally, the scientists did get the right pen which could write in space. But what was a simple solution? Anybody? Pencil, right? So I think as technologists, we really need to ask the right question. The question was not, we need a pen to write in space. The question would have been, hey, we need something to write in space, right? And that's when innovation happens. So I think I completely agree to Usha's point. We all need to tune ourselves to hammer on the why, and get to that right question, because that's when the right solution will automatically show you the way.
I think that's a great segue to the point we were discussing before the panel about if you look at the talent landscape in India, are we having the kind of talent, or are we grooming the kind of talent that has the skills, the courage, the mindset to ask open-ended questions, or to be able to look at problems which are ambiguous in nature? Because a lot of this discussion that we've had is, can you see something that has not even been solved? Can you look at even asking the right questions? What are your thoughts on how you are seeing the talent landscape in your respective spaces, and how are you addressing it? At the end of the day, you are running your businesses. How are you addressing it? At the end of the day, it has to be a solution. You want to start, Arvind?
Sure. In terms of talent, again, there are two parts, right? There is functional skills, like, software development, programming, what have you. That seems like the easier thing. The big push and encouragement and even definition of leadership we have in our organization goes back to, are you able to find sort of the right problems to solve? It's very easy to come back and say, students, education system, the junior talent has the issue. I'll tell you what's a big challenge as managers. How do you do performance review of someone who's attempting a problem for which the solution is not known beforehand, for which the steps is not known beforehand, right? So how do you do that? Because if you don't do that, then as an organization, you do not know how to nurture and celebrate the activity of somebody attempting something for which even you as so-called senior leadership did not know how to solve the problem earlier. Right? I think that's something that we have to solve for, because if we do that, then we are encouraging and incentivizing the right kind of behaviors, right? And people ultimately respond to what is encouraged, supported, appreciated, rewarded. So I think it's equally a question, it's a challenge for leadership within the tech community to figure out, saying, do you have ways to recognize, celebrate this, such that individuals gain the confidence which you spoke of, saying, it's okay for me to attempt something which is vague, which is ambiguous, because that's more valued than solving something for which the correct answer, so to say, is known upfront.
A very good point. I'd love to come back to you to ask, how do you do it? But Usha, your thoughts?
Yeah. I would say definitely, we have been doing software for many, many years, and I think we are known in the world that, we can do software. Somewhere I think the mindset has to change. At least the people think, coding is the only, big thing. But we have been of late, questioning people with experience and, coming from that domain. How do you even look at, your requirements, or how do you even create your, specifications? Because when you're trying to attempt to do something innovative or do something new, things are going to be very, very vague and ambiguous. So how do we navigate in that space is going to become the key thing going forward if we have to move into the next slab or next space, whatever we want to call it. Because people are hung up on only certain aspects, but I think we can definitely leap into the other area of figuring out the ambiguity, where we need to play, and then even things are not very clear. How do you start with from a zero requirements or zero as a clean sheet of paper, and then start to build on it? That is the mindset.
So
I think
how do you do it? How do you do it, and how do you coach your teams to do it?
Okay, this is something I think we can do it, and continuous coaching, and then giving them that space, saying you can think about it and don't have to always look for someone, and especially they look at the counterparts elsewhere and say, let them give me, I will do it. So I think, I have changed majorly, telling them that, you are not going to ask anyone. So you are going to solve it yourself. That mindset has really brought in change, I would say. So we all have to say, it's just give them the time and space and tell them that you can do it. I think that is changing the...
Do you have thoughts there?
Yeah, in the sense, I was just thinking that, the talent gap will always be there, or at least, there are people who are looking out for, hey, I want to go ahead and do something in the latest buzzword areas, right? So these days it is data analytics, machine learning, AI, whatnot. And on the other hand, also there are enterprises, startups, corporates, whatnot, and they are saying I don't find people with the right skill. So the way we do it, or the way I would encourage everyone is, you're looking for somebody with a certain profile, be very truthful. What is it that you're looking for? Advertise that. And that way, the person who's approaching, and when they come on board, they feel, yes, what I was sold is what I'm getting, and they will be very passionate about that work. Because to bridge the talent gap, it's not just about hiring, it's also about retention. So we are seeing a very high attrition rate for the last 3 to 4 years, which is running in double digits at 12% to 15%, right? And it's also very important that once you have somebody on board, you have the right engagement, the right retention, and that can come if there is a mutual collaboration and everybody is invested into the single goal. That is the one most important thing we all need to pay attention towards. So I think I would agree to whatever is being said, but in addition to that, we all need to be very truthful. We all need to be ourselves passionate, first of all, about what we are doing, and that's when we can bring on board other people who are equally passionate, and then it's a beautiful journey.
So what I'm hearing, and I will to paraphrase it a little bit, one, in our job descriptions, let's not have every possible language and every possible technology and every possible framework that somebody needs to learn. It's not going to happen. Because what you are really looking for, if I were to synthesize this, is ambiguous problem-solving skills. And what you are really looking for is the ability to ask the right questions, the ability to think differently, to be able to look at business opportunities to solve. So you actually, what you're looking for and what you're advertising for, two very, very different things. Let me ask the last question to each one of you. If you were to give people an advice to become a rock star CTO, what advice would that be? And kind of brings from your learning also over the last whatever number of years that people can take away from. So if, Arvind, you want to start?
Sure. I think it starts off with learnability. I think you just said that, right? Fundamentally, it's not about what you know today. Right? What you know today, you may be great at it, but there's going to be something 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, it's going to be different. So individually, can you learn it? That's one part. Second, institutionally, can you encourage people to also learn? Because as I said, let's say AI revolution happens, the world needs, whatever, 500,000 people who know AI, right? We will have to train the existing set of people. So are you able to institutionally tell people it's okay for you to go pick, new skills? And then in terms of organizational objectives, are you able to tell people it's okay to chase something that you didn't do before? So don't anchor yourself to your past or your present, right? Be open to the idea that what is going to be important, impactful in future is what none of us have seen done before, but then we all have the ability to pursue something new at all levels, right? Individual, team, overall company. And if you can keep maintaining that ethos all along, right? Everybody moves along.
Usha, your piece of advice?
Yeah, my piece of one thing that I can bring is, value addition. In every problem, don't look at it from the same perspective that, my friend or my colleague, whoever looked at it, right? Always look at it differently, and it's okay to bring your perspective. And especially in our culture, it's not okay to be always, counter-arguing or bringing your new thoughts. But I would say, I think, build that mentality where you're going to question the whole concept itself. And that's when I think a lot of things can change for us.
Yeah, I think I would concur. The CTO is the change leader, and so one very important skill, other than what Arvind and Usha said, is you need to be bold, you need to be courageous, because you are taking that step, you are taking that decision which others are not able to fathom yet. You are able to see it, and you need to like, articulate it really well. Everybody will fall with you and like, they will walk behind you, but they need some time to understand that. So don't lose hope in saying that, hey, I have this idea and I know that this is going to like, work or change my business, my industry in so and so way, but I'm not getting supporters. The supporters will fall in line, and like, you need to pursue that idea, of course, like, with logic. And second thing I would say is be yourself. Like, you have so much experience, you have learned it by doing, you have been on that journey. So be yourself, you don't have to emulate anybody else. So if you're authentic, and if you're not like afraid of making some bold decisions, I'm sure like things will fall in place.
No, great. I think just summarizing at least 2 or 3 keywords I took away from here in terms of advice. One is growth mindset, being able to think about, you don't know something yet. Asking bold questions. I think I would also say it's okay to look stupid sometimes, because if you always were to be correct and if you always were to second guess yourself, you will never ask questions that have not been asked before. And courage, because you will have to go into places where others are not yet thinking about. So with that, let me thank my panelists for a good discussion. I'm sure we could have continued for much longer, but thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed.
We'd like to thank
Rohini. This was very
Usha,
nicely
Arvind,
done.
Parul.